Hello and welcome to this weird Eurovision vlog. So, it's been about a week since the final of Eurovision happened, and I honestly felt like I needed a little bit of time to actually process and be able to do a proper kind of recap or like deconstruction of the final, especially because every time I went to press record on this video, it felt like there were new details that I hadn't fully been able to process yet. So, let's talk about it. I'm going to quickly just do a recap of the scoreboard from the bottom up. Then we're going to start looking at some of the details that I want to look at. Not necessarily all of the details that exist, but some of the details that I really wanted to look at. So we had San Marino coming up in the wooden spoon position, Iceland second to last, Spain, and then like Denmark and Luxembourg on a tie, but Luxembourg ended up placing higher. Portugal, Armenia, UK, Norway, Malta, Lithuania, Germany, Poland, Latvia, Netherlands, Finland, Switzerland, Ukraine, and then Albania placing higher on a countback. France, Greece, Italy, Sweden, Estonia, Israel, and then Austria. My thing with the grand final honestly ended up being that I don't think I had anticipated even how tight of a scoreboard this would end up being. The fact that there's like a couple of ties and then a lot of people that were within 1 or 2 points of a placing. I don't even think I thought that the grand final would be as close as it was. Some of the biggest surprises of the night honestly include Switzerland's null point in the televote. I didn't think it would score highly in the televote, but I also didn't think that it would end up dead last in the televote. Dead last on a tieback with the United Kingdom. I legitimately think I thought that it would gather some points here and there, some minor points. Don't get me wrong, I didn't have it in my head that it would suddenly become a televote juggernaut, because a lot of people's first reactions to the song wasn't that way. It was the performance. So for it to come second in the jury and then last in the televote is now the highest, like the biggest difference in placing between the two. Not in points, by the way. I think that still belongs to, it's either Spirit in the Sky or Stefania. I will possibly look that up and put it as a little text thing down the bottom here. Malta's televote placing really shocked me a little bit. I did think it would place a little bit higher. Possibly it got overrun by a lot of other gimmicky pop numbers in the eventuality of the scoreboard. It losing its line, like the big line, was possibly what also did it in. Because I know some people who knew the song specifically from that line. What didn't surprise me is that a majority of its televotes actually came from Australia. It feels like it's exactly the kind of thing that we'd get behind. There were some weird math things going on in the scoreboard as well. Like you have Greece placing 8th in both votings and then eventually ending up 6th overall. I love math. Math makes so much sense sometimes. Or Germany placing 11th in the televote and 13th in the juries and then 15th overall. Like, math. This is... Or San Marino, like, 20th and 25th and then still coming last overall. It's definitely not our highest point gathering last place. I believe that honour in this system still goes to Portugal's 2018 host entry. I guess some pleasant surprises in the mix was Latvia's 7th place in the jury. I don't think even I thought it would get that high. Maybe I did, but I don't think I genuinely believed it until I saw it happening. I mean, to be fair, there's always like 1 or 2 entries that do really well in the jury that, you know, almost unexpectedly well. Like this is Latvia's best placing since 2015. This is Greece's best placing since 2013. I think it's Estonia's best placing since 2002. Albania's best placing since, I believe, Seuss, and also I think their best televoting placing ever. Well, it's obviously Denmark's best placing since 2019, and it's also obviously Malta's best placing since 2021. I don't think there's that many notable other placings to talk about. Like, even Italy didn't score their worst place since 2016, which I think was a little bit of a shock to the system as well. But I think half of the reason that I've delayed putting this video out is the discussion around the Israeli televote. Obviously, there are a lot of geopolitical factors in play when it comes to Israel's existence in Eurovision, not only this year but also last year. A lot of discussions can tend towards accidentally leaning slightly too far the wrong way. There are a couple of points that I really want to address when it comes to Israel's televotes. First of all, most of their douze points in the televote came from the same nations as last year. Now, I haven't looked at every single nation's 12 points, but I know that in Australia, before Hurricane, we would generally vote for something loud and garish and kind of like the, I want to say, stereotypical Eurovision entry that we kind of think about in Australia. I'm pretty sure Hey Mama got our 12. I'm pretty sure Cha 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 got our televoting 12. Things like that. Like, in Australia, we tend to vote for like really wild, out there kind of, oh, that's quintessential Eurovision type entries. We don't tend to vote for ballads like this. And another point of reference that I have when it comes to discussing our points specifically is that Israel scored the absolute lowest percentage of approval from the overall primetime delayed viewing audience in Australia. To me, what this doesn't cry riggery, but what it does suggest to me is that the 23% of audience members who approved of Israel's song were likely to vote for Israel's song. And then the other 77 or so percent of the audience have to vote for anything else. And because there are 25 other entries we could have voted for this year that were not Israel, what ends up happening is that people who are passionate for Israel or likely to vote for Israel will vote for Israel and maybe even likely vote only for Israel. Whereas I know that people like myself or people that I even watched the final with were a little bit more likely to spread out their votes across the competing acts. I do understand that there are approximately somewhere between 8 to 10 countries who have expressed that they want the televoting to be looked into as a result of this final. Until we have results of any sort of investigation on that, it feels almost like a conspiracy to say the televote is entirely rigged. But on the other hand, it also feels like even if the televote isn't rigged, people are genuinely using this as a way to support Israel instead of the entry. A lot of people, when they say support Israel, they really mean support the IDF and the government in their war against Hamas or in Gaza. The fact that Eurovision is being allowed to garner support for a war and support for a nation who, at this point, proportionate reaction is far gone. And several international agencies are ruling their war that they are perpetuating as a genocide against Palestinians and not against Hamas. The killing of innocent children and babies, for whatever reasons that there are, I do not find any action of war acceptable. If the televote for Israel is not just a sympathy vote for Yuval, but also in support of Israel as a nation state in its continued war efforts, that something needs to be done. The fact that Israel were leading that scoreboard until Austria's televote points were announced, to me, says that the Eurovision format is being harnessed in a way that is no longer in its mission, because its mission was to unite a war-torn Europe. But right now, all I'm seeing in the fandom and within people that I know is division over the fact that Israel are included in Eurovision. If their vote is purely credit karma and sim farming in nations where it is easier to garner televote support to get to 12 points, then to me it says that it's much less about supporting the entry and more about continuing to highlight Israel in the Eurovision Song Contest. And if government agencies are pumping €1 million into their entire campaign, where a bunch of delegations' entire budget is less than half of that, then I think conversations need to be had. I understand that a lot of people take any form of criticism of Israel as not only anti-Zionist but anti-Semitic. Whether or not that is how you view it, I know that my particular beliefs come from a place of anti-Zionism and anti-war. They do not come from anti-Semitism. I would very heavily like to believe that I am not discriminatory towards any Jewish person for their religious practices, but I would like to think that any particular criticism I have of Israel is particularly levied at the IDF and their government. People may believe what they believe, but I don't believe in war being the answer for anything. That all aside, let's actually talk about the grand final, because I thought that literally other than the awkwardness in the last 10 minutes around Israel potentially winning and bringing Eurovision to another potentially war-torn country, because, the narrative is that Israel is war-torn right now and not definitely still a party nation, and Tel Aviv 2026 would have definitely not happened because it definitely could not have happened. By the way, I'm heavily sarcastic sometimes. I didn't find a third host was really necessary for the show. I just felt that Hazel and Sandra were good enough hosts, but I do respect that they wanted to bring a third host in, and I mean, it's not like she negatively impacted the experience. I just didn't think that after the two hosts doing so well in the semi-final that a third host was actually necessary at all. To me, right, once you get to the grand final of Eurovision, it's kind of just about celebrating the songs. When it's the semi-final, I'm so anxious for my favourites to make it to the final, because I'm aware that only one out of the 25 or 26 or 27, depending on the year, acts can actually win the grand final. I'm just so chilled by the time the grand final is actually happening until we see a bloody scoreboard. Then it's all about, do my favourites do well? Stuff like that. I love the grand final scoreboard. It's so fun. But I do actually have a bit of a criticism this year. We didn't see the scoreboard that much during the jury voting, and it made it really hard to keep track of where a lot of my favourites were and the potential winners were. And, I don't know. Obviously, by the time the juries were finished and, the televoting scores were all up and, all that stuff, it felt like there was more than enough, time and all that shit to kind of really take in what the scoreboard looked like, especially once all of the televoting points started kicking in. 3 or 4 more seconds of scoreboard per jury before the 12 points are announced would be fine. They've done it in other years, and I don't know why they chose to do it this year specifically, but the people I was watching with, we were all kind of we don't know what the scoreboard looks like because we haven't seen it. And we don't see it that much. So it did become a little bit hard to keep track of that, especially you only had a few seconds to really process, okay, where's my favorite? Oh, cool, you're there? Cool. Okay. And next country. And you were you had no time to process where any country really was in the grand scheme of things. My voting party kind of noticed that if the voting is open from the start of the show, then the voting still being open for 40 minutes after the final song is a little bit redundant. And I tended to agree with that sentiment. Even if all of the big five and whatever are within the show now, I don't think the voting should be opened until the end of the final song. I have to say, I really appreciate the backwards recap, but I think it should be the second recap and not the final recap. The backwards recap should be not the final minutes before the voting closes. I understand it's a little bit of a subliminal countdown, But I also think that if we're going to commit to a backwards recap being within the show, it shouldn't be like the final recap and only the final recap. I still think the first recap should be in like show order, but then like the second one should be backwards, and also fuck it, the third one can be backwards too. I've seen that there's a lot of mixed reaction towards Nemo's interval act, but personally I found that Nemo's interval act was like a highlight of the show. As uncomfortable as I think that the performance sort of made me, I think that was sort of on purpose, actually. I think that Unexplainable is meant to make you feel slightly uncomfortable. It's meant to be about trying to find your place in the world and stuff like that. Like, a lot of Nemo's songs are sort of about the journey of getting to your identity. What if I'm unexplainable is part of your identity and also kind of part of embracing it. They're unexplainable, but like, to me, once you hit the point of understanding that you're unexplainable, then you just start kind of being yourself. And I think that's what they were doing on stage, you know. Maybe I'm unexplainable, but they were just being themselves. And I love that so much from them. Another aspect of the show that I really enjoyed was the Karya and Baby Lasagna interval act. More specifically, the first half. I can't lie, I actually really love that mashup of their entries. I wish that it would be put out somewhere. That mashup, I think I would buy that before I would buy Eurodap. I might still buy Eurodap, I'm not gonna lie. Like, you can kind of see, I'm definitely a collect music kind of person. Almost to my financial detriment in some cases. I'm just going to briefly talk about some of what I thought were robberies in amongst the lineup. Surely Roa should have been above Spain. I think in the televote, Denmark should have gotten a couple more points, and probably also Malta should have gotten some more points. Switzerland as a null pointer, like, come on, Europe. Appreciate art more. This was art. Voyage was definitely a moment for me, and I did go to a primetime viewing party for the grand final with some of my friends. SBS usually puts subtitles on, and the subtitles for Voyage made the song hit quite different in a good way. I understand that this is entirely jury-led, but the fact that the United Kingdom were 19th in the final, they should have been possibly like way closer to the bottom. I understand that their harmonies are probably what attracted quite a lot of their jury vote, but like, this song was not it. I stand by the fact that I think that the United Kingdom are actually trying for the record of most null points in the televote in the decade. Switzerland is kind of right behind them with 2 now. And it's crazy that it's happened with 2 ballads from Switzerland as well. Switzerland, your ballads are kind of televote poison. I will talk about the Netherlands' low televote points. I did think that the fact that they got quite low and they were like one of the favourites felt a little bit odd to me. But I know there's wider conversations happening around artists of colour and their lower than expected televoting points in Eurovision. I don't think that I'm the person to discuss this heavily, but I've listened to quite a few people pointing this out several times. People like Destiny, people like John Lundvik, there is a history of artists of colour underperforming, is the language that I've heard used in the contest, especially if they're doing songs that might be of their culture. If this is the case, then, you know, there's a connotation of it's Eurovision, but also, like, we should be doing better, plain and simple. Italy coming top 5, even with the lack of expectations of them to do so, kind of ended up feeling right by the end of the final to me. I always thought there was a chance that Italy would hit harder than we expected. And I think that their decision to include subtitles in the performance did a lot of the work, because you could understand the story. I'm not saying that this is what we should be doing across the board, but I don't necessarily disagree that subtitles in either a commonly spoken language or your language wouldn't go astray at Eurovision. Again, the primetime viewings in Australia have these subtitles. And so, like, to me, it was a shock to know that the live broadcasts don't when we started broadcasting live. And it was an even bigger shock to find out that the international broadcasts don't have these particular subtitles. I don't think I noticed the first time I watched live because it was through a live stream, and I don't think there were that many songs not in English that year. So I didn't notice that. But Italy having the subtitles there and being able to heavily identify with the lyrics, I think made it hit quite a bit differently than maybe we expected. France's low televote, I think, comes down to the performance. I know quite a few people, myself included, who are big fans of the song or, loved the song or liked the song significantly, like that kind of spectrum, who were kind of bored by the performance. And if you can make the performance boring to someone who likes the song, you're not going to bring in a new audience. This is where I kind of understand it not doing as well as expectations. I think Greece in 6th was actually a fairly unexpected placement. But that doesn't mean that I disliked it at all. I actually thought that Klavia gave a really good performance of Asteromata. Greece getting their tied best placing since Secret Combination. I think 6th is their tied best since then. Highly deserved because it shows that Greece can actually still do this bloody contest when they try. I know Greece hasn't always tried. Marina Sati's performance last year shows this isn't death for Greek competitors. It had been a while before Zari that a Greek artist's song had actually performed commercially well within Greece. There was a period there after Oniromu flopped or didn't qualify that Greece just sent very generic pop songs of different flavors. And I mean, Die Together wasn't that generic, but it was still just Nordic pop, right? I'm pretty sure she's literally a classmate of Sigrid's or something like that. It was damn, okay. To me, this shows that between this and Zari, there's definitely room for a flavor of more traditionally Greek music at Eurovision, and people still appreciating that. Sweden in 4th feels low, but that's also what Hold Me Closer got in 2022, and I think that felt low for that as well. This is another aspect of the discussion of the production of Eurovision this year that we really need to discuss. There were basically no audio audience mics. I've heard video of this going off in the arena. It's a shame that this potentially suffered from the fact that they were trying not to broadcast the audience's volume or audio this year. This song maybe couldn't have won by the end of the week, but it could have been top 3. However, Estonia, congratulations. I had my absolute doubts about Tommy Cash for a long time. I did. I really did. But obviously, that performance hit the audience correctly. It's just wild seeing Estonia on the podium because they haven't been on the podium literally since 2002. 23 years ago. Even then, their podium position in 2002 was a tie, if I'm not mistaken, which is absolutely crazy. Well done. It's definitely not my cup of tea, but I had very much softened on the performance by the time the final had come around. And I thought, okay, you know what? This is obviously hitting the casuals. Its televoting score was not undeserved. I don't want to talk about Israel again. Please just go see the beginning of the video, basically. But I don't think the song deserved second, and because I feel the need to discuss New Day Will Rise as a song, my very basic opinion is that Hurricane was a better song, which is not to say that I really like either of them at all, but I do think that Hurricane was a better song, and the jury placing reflects where I think this song should have placed. Last but certainly not least is the Austrian entry, which eventually won the Eurovision this year. My main doubt was that a jury would still connect with this the moment that I saw that he would actually show you that he's not singing the climax. However, those first 2 minutes are beautiful, and I think that because of the impossibility of performing the correct technique live, that he almost kind of got grace from not singing that part live and being visible not singing that part live. Like, his vocal was perfect, like, every time I saw it. It's not one of my favorite songs by any means, but as a performance, I think that JJ definitely did everything that he should have done. An opera song can actually win Eurovision if it's engaging enough, especially given the entire discourse around Wasted Love had basically been an opera song won't win Eurovision. It never has. That's the one detracting point that I constantly, and I mean constantly, saw around Wasted Love for the entire lead up to the contest, is that no one is going to vote for an opera song, because generally they don't. While it came fourth in the televote, that is still one of the highest placings for an opera song, and I think it is actually the highest placing for an opera song in the Eurovision televote, because usually it caps out around 6th or 7th. Thank you for being here. I know I kind of just started my YouTube channel, and I took like a really long break to actually cover the grand final, but like, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, I would highly appreciate it. And you know what? Hopefully I'll be around, maybe not anywhere near as frequently, but I would like to start trying to do some more video essay style content instead of discussion and reaction. So we'll see how that goes. Goodbye.